Hello, and welcome to Shaking and Sipping. This is the show where we shake, or today stir, a variety of cocktails and other mixed drinks. We sip them, talk a little bit about their history, how they are, sometimes look at some variations or historical versions. We're currently working our way through the IBA's official list of cocktails. We're in Section 1, the Unforgettables, and this week we are to the Brandy Crusta. Now, the Brandy Crusta is a very old drink, going back to the 1850s. And it's a very important drink, although it's not a terribly well-remembered or oft-ordered drink today, in my experience. Now, it's a bit of a shame for this one the IBA, like most drinks after the first few, stopped giving us a history. And in this case, that's really disappointing because we know the history very well. Unlike some of the others, it's not credited to many different people. It's credited to one person. We know roughly when it was created. Should be easy. So this drink, which consists of brandy, some sort of sweetener, some sort of liqueur, some bitters, and lemon juice, was created by Joseph Santini in New Orleans in the 1850s. He worked at two different bars in the 1850s, one that he just worked for and one that he started called the Jewel of the South. It was created at one of those in the decade of the 1850s. We know this because it is in Jerry Thomas's 1862 edition of his classic cocktail manual, and he credits it to him, although he misspells his last name and thinks that he's Spanish, even though he's actually an Italian immigrant. So, not sure, maybe he took his notes after trying a few of the beverages. We're going to talk about that a little bit when we get to making the historical version, and we're going to talk about the wonderful book Imbibe by David Wondrich. But first, let's look at the IBA version. But before we begin either version, we need to talk a little bit about the garnish of the drink. Now, as I've slightly intimated in several episodes, I think, I am not a huge fan of elaborate garnishes. I think that garnishes that add something to the drink, like having a citrus peel or something that's dropped in the drink or rubbed over the drink, expressed over the drink, makes a ton of sense. Something like a cherry that actually adds flavor to the drink and you get to enjoy at the end, fantastic. Something fun and decorative that's easy, like having a pineapple frond or something sticking out of a drink, fine, very fun. But drinks that require elaborate peel cuttings and peel curlings and things, I don't get it. It's not doing anything for me. Now, in this case, the drink is supposed to have a garnish, and I will show pictures on screen nowish. It's supposed to have a garnish that not only do I think doesn't add to the drink, I think it actively hurts the drink. It is a wheel of garnish cut from a peel of a lemon, traditionally, or orange in the IBA's case, that you sort of stuff into a small cocktail glass. And then it's just sort of sitting there, and you either try to drink through it, but it doesn't really work because it just falls down, or it has like a hole in it that you try to drink out of, and so you end up just pushing the garnish into the drink to drink it. It doesn't look good, it's a mess, etc. So some versions of the drink, like the one in the Imbibe magazine, doesn't call for doing this at all anymore. They say to just rub a lemon over the edge of the drink, twist it, and that's your garnish. I am very partial to this philosophy. I will, however, show an absolute abomination of an attempt that I made on how Difford's Guide recommends to do it, which I like in theory. I executed very poorly in practice, but their idea is rather than using a peel, actually to cut a barrel out of a lemon, hollow it out, and then stick it into the glass with sugar syrup so that it becomes an extension of the glass. You can directly drink through it, it's firm, etc. Now, two problems that I had with this. One is I could not find a glass-fruit combo that sized well. So I ended up going with an orange in a Nick and Nora glass, and it still didn't really fit. It's slightly too big, even though everything else was slightly too small. Also, the use of sugar syrup as the stiction agent makes a ton of sense to try to glue the orange in place, but is very viscous and dries slowly. So unlike when I would normally rim a glass using either a base spirit or the juice of a fruit, which are both low viscosity and dry quickly, the sugar syrup just continued to drip absolutely everywhere and became a horrible mess. So I will show you that abomination. This is not how you should do it. I'm sure this can be done better. But it will be functional. Here is something absolutely terrible. But it is a stuck-in orange peel with a nice giant coating of sugar and sugar syrup. It's really quite something. When we make the other version, I have just lightly rimmed a glass in a normal manner. So here's this thing. I apologize. With that said, let's make the IBA variant of the drink. All right, so we're gonna add some ice, and we're gonna start with bitters. So we want 2 dashes of an aromatic bitters using the classic Angostura, which would actually be probably correct, or if not Angostura, something very similar to that for the time. Even though this is from New Orleans, it's unlikely that something like Peychaud's would have been used. Then we are going to need a few different things here. We're going to need maraschino, which is not in the original recipe, as we'll discuss in a moment. And we want a 1/4 ounce of maraschino. We want a bar spoon each of dry curacao and simple syrup. This is just a homemade 2-to-1 white sugar simple. And then we need 15 milliliters, so 1/2 ounce of lemon. I've forgotten my juicer. Actually, before we juice this, even though this is bad practice, I'm gonna take a twist off of this lemon now for use in our second drink. Ideally, you don't want to do this before it is needed because you will lose some of the oils as it sits there, but I am running low on lemons. So we're going to go ahead and have that. And we want, as I said, 15 milliliters of our lemon. That is 1/2 ounce. Okay, that's about right. And then the star of our show, of course, the brandy. As with most drinks, unless they're very recent or call for something very specific, when they say brandy, what's really ideal is a 19th century style cognac. We're using the Pierre Ferrand as usual, and we want 1 3/4 ounce of the Pierre Ferrand cognac, the 1840, obviously, not one of their modern ones. And that's all we need. Let's give it a stir. And then let's strain this into my absolute abomination of a glass here. Great. This is the IBA Brandy Crusta with the most terrible garnish you've ever seen. So that's really nice. It's very different than what we're gonna have next, I think, but very, very mild in a way. It's got, you feel that heat of the cognac, but everything on top of it is just dancing. It's sweet, almost too sweet on the high notes, but the cognac is balancing it out and giving us enough happening underneath that the drink itself doesn't feel cloying. But the maraschino and the lemon together are really just having fun, bright, definitely New Orleans hot day would be a ton of fun, even though it's a brandy drink. I like that quite a bit. This is still very hard to drink out of. Just got a bit of random orange in my mouth that I don't like. But it is sticking there. It's not bouncing all over the place, so that's fun. The sugar shell, fine. I don't need it. It's already sweet enough, but it's not bad. The bitters are in there. They're not really coming to the front, just with that assault of curacao, maraschino, simple, and lemon juice. Those are so many bright flavors that the bitters, I'm sure that if we didn't have them, it'd be even brighter. Like, I'm sure they're toning that down to some extent, but they're not showing up as themselves, which isn't a bad thing. That is a sign of balance, but it's not perfect. But a very good drink. Very nice. I will enjoy finishing this. Let's move on to talk a little bit about the original version and its history. Alright, so to talk a little bit about the drink's history more, we're splitting history a little bit in this episode. Why is this drink so important? I said it's very important, but I didn't really tell you why. This is the first cocktail that we really know of to use fruit juice in it. That was very new at the time. Now, there were punches and other things that certainly had loads of fruit juice in them, but the idea of making a actual cocktail, a simple single serving drink, including bitters, dominated by a base spirit that also had fruit juice in it, nothing else, for almost 40 years. It's not until the 1890s when we start to get sidecars and other things. This is the predecessor of all of those. It wasn't massively popular at the time, but it did attain some amount of niche following, and over time people realized that's a really good idea. We need to be adding fruit juice to drinks. However, what that also means is that IBA version is just wrong. There's way too much fruit juice in that. There's too much stuff going on. This is the first time we're adding fruit juice. It is a tiny bit player ingredient. Also, maraschino, not common at the time, would not be in this drink either. And in general, additions should be much smaller. This is a classic in every sense of the name cocktail. This should be, like an old-fashioned, a spirit with a little bit of stuff sprinkled in to elevate that spirit. So with that said, we're going to read from the Bible of Cocktailing, Imbibe. This is David Wondrich's tale of Jerry Thomas and his first ever sort of bartender's guide, published back in 1862. And we are going to read, I'm not going to read most of this because you should buy this book yourself, but we are going to read, because I don't have the Bon Vivant's Companion, which is Jerry Thomas's book. I don't have a copy handy, so we're going to read a quote from it out of Imbibe. So this is his direct description of the Crusta. Crusta is made the same as a fancy cocktail, with a little lemon juice and a small lump of ice added. First, mix the ingredients in a small tumbler, then take a fancy red wine glass, rub a sliced lemon around the rim of the same, and dip it in pulverized white sugar, so that the sugar will adhere to the edge of the glass. Pare half a lemon, the same as you would an apple, all in one piece, so that the paring will fit into the wine glass, as shown in the cut, and strain the Crusta from the tumbler into it. Then smile. First of all, what a great little ending there, then smile. In the cut, he means the illustration. And it does show, and I'll try to get a better image of this in the video, but in case I don't for some reason, here's what it looks like in the book. And you can see it is, as I described one of the options earlier, where it doesn't really fully rim, it's sort of dipping down in one point. There's no way to really drink it with that remaining in place. So we're not going to do that here either. But what we are going to do is try to follow the ingredients recipe. So the excerpt here doesn't include the ingredients, but they aren't that useful anyway, because like most things in the manual, they talk about lots of things like a little bit of, and a dash of, and a half wine glass of, and other things like that, which are very hard to measure today. So we're going to follow what David Wondrich has worked out to be those correct original proportions as we make the original Jerry Thomas version of this drink, and then put it into a glass without a ridiculous garnish on it, because we just don't need that. So I'm going to dump out my mixing glass, and I'll be right back. Alright, so for the Jerry Thomas version, we're going to start out with some ice. We are going to add to that the same 2 dashes of aromatic bitters. And we are then going to begin to add some other things. So he calls for 1 teaspoon of gum syrup. I don't have any gum syrup handy. That's just simple syrup with gum arabic added to it. Makes the drink have a slightly thicker mouthfeel. You can make it. It's good. Maybe we'll make it at some point in the future, but simple's gonna work just fine. this here. And this bar spoon is almost exactly a teaspoon, so that worked perfectly for this. So we have 1 teaspoon of our gum syrup, we have our 2 dashes of bitters, then we need half a teaspoon of curacao, which is not much. And as I said, there's no maraschino in this, so this is our only other liqueur component, is half a teaspoon of orange curacao. And then we need just 1 teaspoon of our lemon juice this time. So let's use this to contain any droppings, which we didn't have. Perfect. Just and then finally our spirit, which again will be the cognac, this time up to 2 ounces, so that would be 60 milliliters. So way less of everything else, no maraschino, and more spirit. This is much more of what we would expect from the time period as a true cocktail. Let's give it a stir. Excellent. And then now we have a glass that I've just prepared sort of with a regular sugar rim instead of all that jazz from before. Much more pleasing to look at, in my opinion. And then he does not call for obviously adding a twist because he's already got the lemon peel going, but I'm just gonna go ahead and lightly twist that. And then I do like that in there still, so I'm just gonna throw that right in. This is very nearly sans garnish, the Jerry Thomas version, or the original, the Joseph Santini version of the Brandy Crusta. Yeah, and that's so different. So this really is much more of what I expect from that time period. This is drinking a cognac that someone has elevated. It's an improved cognac. So this very much tastes of cognac. If you asked me to name the #1 flavor note, it would be whatever I get out of that same exact cognac, but brighter. So it's not incredibly complex, it's not doing as many different layers of things, other than that the cognac itself already has sort of some barrel notes, some spirit notes, very little bit of actual wood flavor, but also the things that the wood imparts, a slight bit of that almost winey note that some cognac has, where there's a little bit of a old grape thing happening. It's fantastic, but then it's just slightly brighter because there's that little bit of lemon juice, the little bit of the curacao, which I think I would go slightly more curacao. I think this could stand to take a full teaspoon of the curacao, but otherwise I wouldn't mess with this. And here the sugar rim is actually helpful because the drink itself is very dry, right? There's only a little bit of simple in it, no maraschino, which is incredibly sweet. So now the sugar rim is actually a really nice contrast, and that's honestly the biggest layer in the drink, quote unquote, is that I first taste this incredible sweetness on my tongue because I've got this ultra fine sugar stuck to it, and then I get hit with pure spirit, right? I think both of these are great drinks. I would make neither of them with the specified garnish. This is how I would absolutely do it, though feel free to do a much better job than me on the correct garnish and have fun with that. But make either of these versions. This one is a great sort of late night spirit forward, real nice, relaxing, deep drink. The other one is a very bright afternoon beverage, a lot of fun. Also, if you're not that into pure base spirit, that other one might be more to your taste. Either way, thanks so much for coming along with me today on this journey looking at the Brandy Crusta, the drink that introduced citrus to cocktails. Hope you're enjoying it. If you are, I'd appreciate a like, a subscribe, ringing the bell. Leave a comment if you have any thoughts on this or how badly I have cocked up that garnish. Please follow me on Twitter at shaking_sipping. That's where you'll see what's happening next and when videos and other things are coming out. Go to the blog, shakingandsipping.com. We'll have a write-up on this and every other drink we do with photos and more details. We also, each time we post a video, the next day, there is a blog entry of me going to a local cocktail bar, ordering the drink with no other modifiers listed, seeing how they make it, if it's still common there, their thoughts on it, if they put a twist on it, etc. So that will be going up tomorrow around noon Pacific time. So please check that out as well. And until next week, happy sipping. Cheers.